Welcome to Duncan Thorin Shield's YouTube channel. I managed to con Duncan into convincing his friend to pay me thousands and thousands of dollars as a professional Counter-Strike player, so maybe he can convince you that some of his analysis is correct.
Okay, this is going to be episode 50, I think it's 54 of Counterpoints. It's quite a good number we got up there. We did take that mad hiatus for like 1 year, Moses, but still been grinding it out. Got back on the horse. He's died. He's dead.
Great start.
He's dead. I think he's
I'm
dead.
here. I'm here. You got
He
me?
muted himself, didn't he? You muted yourself, didn't you, Moses?
Yeah, the cable popped out a little bit. I don't know why it's doing that recently.
Okay.
I was saying that it hasn't been a year. It's just been a couple months. Give us some credit.
Okay. Just feels like a year.
Yeah.
Then again, that's just esports casting, isn't it? Like you don't know how many people are like, I'm going to start taking breaks. And then like 2 years later, break's going to start in time soon. Yeah, any minute.
Yeah, but
I can turn down this next event.
I think we've gotten to the point where it's actually going to happen. Don't worry.
Well, here's the thing. It is
We've all
now
lost our
happening.
minds.
Like FACEIT's really helping out with a lot of us taking breaks. As everyone, and again, I will reiterate what I said on Twitter. Everyone thinks that's a funny joke referring to me, but you are all in for a nasty surprise once the rest of the tournament goes on. Anyway. But not that Vice is casting. That wasn't one. That actually was legitimately a bizarre error that had nothing to do with it. So we'll leave that out. Right. Let's start introducing the guests. So in the bottom right-hand corner, he's been on the show before. It's Max Melit. Hopefully now, in a world where you can actually put Reddit threads onto Twitter, someone might actually see some of his articles.
Maybe one day.
Those first 5 people who no one knows, but I would call them guardians of the new queue, they can no longer deny him access to the nirvana of esports traffic. Perhaps people will actually see his articles. It's not a guarantee. There's a lot of haters in the community who aren't on the new queue, so we'll see how it goes.
Anything to say about that, Max?
Oh no, I know. I was just waiting.
It's all
for
true.
further introduction.
He knows it's all
all
true.
of this is 100% true. I am like perpetually just like in complete lapse of traffic until my 1,500 Twitter followers just swarm on that thread and downvote it for how poorly written it is. I'm looking forward to that when my fans turn against me.
Pro tip, just don't ever reference any kind of voting up or down, because that would obviously be a violation of Reddit moderating policy rules.
Can this podcast get banned from Reddit just for mentioning this like topic?
I don't think so. I think I've probably got the time.
You never know.
That,
You never know.
You never know. Yeah.
And
I'm
if they
optimistic.
do, quite frankly, I'll start. I'll go beyond what Richard did. I'll start a nuclear war with Reddit. So we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping it isn't the case.
Turn it into fucking crush, kill, and destroy it here.
Exactly. And then our other guest for this one is going to be Lynxx, who is a writer. So, okay, people know Max writes for a whole bunch of sites. He gets around. HTC, ESPN occasionally, isn't it?
Yeah, from time to time. Yeah,
RivalryGG.
Yeah,
Who, to be honest, I shouldn't even mention, because it's not even like they sponsor me or anything, but they do sponsor other people. But I actually have a heart, so I'll reference people even though they don't pay me. But if you want to get mentioned and you're not good, pay me. It's the easiest way, right? So anyway, the other guest is going to be Lynxx, who is a writer for RealSport, who sadly themselves, I've noticed, get abuse on Reddit now for something they didn't even do, which is that because someone totally unrelated took part in a news story with a certain moron who attempted to make his own network, that then led to people who blatantly come from his Discord going in every thread and commenting as though it was like they were like dropping dime on 9/11 or some shit, like, but didn't you do this? It's like, no, actually you probably didn't do any of that. But you did. And then everyone downvotes the shit. So anyway, as I've seen, there's a lot of sort of creeping depression around the esports industry, mainly for things that have nothing to do with any of us, believe it or not. So it's kind of a bit sad, but we'll push through it anyway, Alan. We'll see.
You're really selling the writing line.
I am.
Right there.
Here's the sad thing. I always do tell people, believe it or not, when they say like, how do I become an esports journalist? I say, first thing is don't. Because unless you must do it, you are going to have a lot of hard times and you're going to regret it a lot and probably question your own self-worth as a human, a lot of things. So it's like, if you have to do it, right, well, now you're sick, so let's deal with the illness, right, manage it, here's the system, like, do things like this, maybe try and have a hobby on the side, don't try to read the comments, I'm trying to be fair when I do it, it's like that Zen thing where supposedly when the new student would go to like the temple, they would just turn him away again and again, and he would have to sit there, you know, in the rain and the snow. And the whole point is, who the fuck wants to be a monk for 20 years just sweeping up, sitting there? So it's like, if you want to do this shit, you better really be fully in, you know. There's no tourists here. So, although actually, ironically, the Johnny Depp movie, The Tourist, also some art that no one ever saw. To be fair, though, it was shit, much like a lot of the first efforts of esports journalists. Right, we tied it all up there. All you need to know is this. I don't actually have segues, but as Moses once said, I have a better crowbar than Gordon Freeman. And that is, if you know that, that's sort of the secret to my career in many ways. I make it sound like it connected, because I just say stuff like, well, I tied it up there when I didn't at all. So, well, speaking of failing to tie up and segue things, the major just began. Now, I know it didn't, because bizarrely, despite the fact everything official says the major begun, some people think an edgy opinion is to go, but maybe this isn't really the major, it's just still the major qualifier. It's like, that doesn't really make any sense on any level, you know? So, let's ignore that for the moment. But the point I'm going to make here is, after DreamHack Masters Stockholm and North's unbelievable, unexpected run to the championship, I mean, people forget, it's not like it's just that they beat Astralis. They 2-0'd Na'Vi and completely crushed them flat, you know. There's some stuff there that was inconceivable. Because they had a new player, the hope everyone who thought they were good had is, right, maybe it's just like the lineups changed, the chemistry's changed. But you come to the major now, and they clearly struggled heavily here. They actually did not end up making it to the top 16. They even don't have the old excuse someone would have had, which is if they've lost in a best of one at the end, you could say, you know, fucking Swiss system. They even lost in a full best of three. So really, there's not a lot of excuses you can make. So I want to start there, right? Alan, you have never been on the show before. There have been a lot of discussions about North across all esports media in the CSGO realm. And I've noticed a lot of people are divided, even people who like North. All you need to know is this. I think the best comment was actually by Wallaby Beetle, where he said something like liking North is for people who hate themselves. It's like even if you do like them, you know it's not going to go well all the time. So my question to you is this. What's your take on the North lineup? You know, insane highs and then this incredible low. Where do you see them?
I think their CT's really one-dimensional in my eyes. The fact that MSL was their primary AWPer and they don't really even have a secondary AWPer apart from AZ it just limits them so much. And even though I think MSL plays positionally correctly, but it's just his mechanical ability really let them down here. And I think the matchup with Vega is really interesting because I know Dax pointed out on the desk, Vega plays really loose. They play loads of like contact hits. They do really aggressive CT sides. And when you're playing against a team like North that doesn't have really stable AWPers, that's the way you should play. And I think they look better than they are against Astralis because they're really well suited to play against them. And I think looser teams, FaZe, Fnatic, Vega, I think that's what gives them issues on their CT sides particularly. So
you know that point you made there, by the way, when you said that, like, I think that's a great way to phrase it, that if you actually look, it's not like MSL's like trying to op like he's simple. He is taking the right angles, etc. But the big problem is this. I actually know from personal experience, MSL, I've often said this as a joke. He's the guy where if I like talk about him and I give him praise, and I'm like, oh, seems like, you know, yes, he's a bit stubborn, but, you know, he has his own ideas, his own system, and he's been very good at bringing up young talent, and he uses them well, and he always has a solid map. But at the end, right, no joke, he will get mad when I then say, not very good individually, obviously. He's one of those guys where, no joke, he really believes that. It's like, no, it's just because I'm the in-game leader. Like, you don't understand, I could frag decent. Like, he doesn't think he's a superstar, but he definitely thinks he can frag. And I can tell you, if you go back to the North lineup at 2017 and you ever watch them play Inferno, watch when he played CT side there, right? So everyone else early in the year, you basically couldn't play pushed up in the banana area because all the T's knew all the Molotovs, the smashes, the floats to push you out or to just kill you directly in aim duels. He used to just have his CT rotator rotate to the other side while he pushed down the banana by himself with a rifle. And then if someone comes out, he would just spray onto them, you know, like it's not like he's ever going to kill 3 people. So like you can see here, there is a bit of a disconnect. Like he definitely does think he can hit shots. He just objectively can't in the game. But that's obviously a topic, right? Because the problem is the biggest worrying sign about the victory at Stockholm was that MSL was the MVP of the tournament and actually did out-AWP everyone, including all the best AWPers and Device. You know, like, that is the one part where even if you believed in all the rest, I feel like even North fans were like, yeah, I don't know about this. I don't know about this, Mr. Not MSL. Like, Max, what do you think on this topic?
MSL AWPing or North generally?
Yes. Just tie it into either.
Oh, okay. Well, it's like the classic thing where it's like, if you can't spray with an AK, just give the motherfucker an AWP and just like tell him to position well, you know? Because he, like, I think objectively, I think he just does not have good aim with a rifle, but I think he knows what position an AWPer needs to play within his own system. And, you know, there's this narrative that he's never been able to utilize AWPers effectively, whether that's because, you know, he's had like Cajun B or who might not consider himself an AWPer. And I've noticed this really interesting parallel between DreamHack Valencia with Mixwell and how MSL plays, and sort of Mixwell plays very aggressively in a similar fashion to how MSL played on Inferno, if we want to talk about North's Inferno. And so when you like add in that whole device demo thing where MSL, you know, allegedly just like sat down in a dark room and just, you know, with a tissue box in one hand and just lubricant in another, just watched device AWPing demos for like hours. It's
highly
just
recommended,
really,
by the way. If anyone's if the rest of your life isn't going very well, just at least you can get some enjoyment that way, right? Just imagine vicariously you are a young 23-year-old or 22-year-old Danish boy AWPing everyone.
Jesus Christ.
If you do that enough times and write about it, Duncan, you become an esports journalist.
You do. You get to become him.
Can confirm. And so I thought MSL, as Alan mentioned, he plays very well positionally, and I think we saw him get exposed fucking hard at the FACEIT, like the major qualifier, whatever you want to call it, like against Hellraisers, against these looser teams. I think they're just very, very, like, can easily punish the scrappiest style that North likes to play. Because interestingly, if you look at the Stockholm results, you'll see that pretty much the closest series they had was against Mouse, who seems very comfortable playing this sort of more aggressive, like looser, more individualized sort of style. And so I think it's this interesting bit of context to look at, is like that they had this really good, as Alan also mentioned, really good matchup against Astralis, but then sort of struggle against these looser teams, which obviously when you look at who they lost to at the FACEIT Major, you know, they're like losing to Vega, Spirit and Hellraisers, you know, these three crazy loose CIS teams. So that's sort of the approach that I'm looking at it with.
Where are you sitting on Moses?
I think young motherfuckers are being way too harsh by MSL. I think with the AWP, I think he's fine for how long he's been doing it for, obviously. I think that's a big factor.
Yeah.
If you notice, like all the AWPers who have transitioned, like Nitro was very similar to, or MSL is very similar to Nitro, and Nitro kind of switched over where you're going to be effective on the CT. T-side's going to be a little bit more difficult. You obviously are a little bit more just holding angles and waiting, but that's fine. You can get by with an AWPer doing that. I think the point that not having like a real AWPer or a real dangerous you know, you can't punish the loose playing teams. I think that's actually, I think that's accurate. I think that's a good point. But overall, I think North, more than anything, I think they just came into this way too confident after winning DreamHack Stockholm, and I can blame them for it. I think it's a shame that they win that event and you don't get any time to enjoy it. 2 days later, they start, you know, they travel on Monday, they have a day off, they have a media day on Tuesday, and Wednesday they're playing in the major qualifier. So you don't get to enjoy the hard work. You don't get to celebrate any of it. And coming in here, I imagine they just felt way too confident and overlooked some of their opponents. I think more than anything, likely what happened, especially, I mean, even when you consider their game against Rogue, just barely edging them in quadruple overtime. And it's not that they probably didn't look into it too much. It's probably you just go into that with just the sense of superiority, and you're not as disciplined as a player. And even if you look at the stats of all their players, I mean, pretty much Nico and MSL were negative ratings. MSL just barely at 0.99, but even I think it was Valda and Jesus Christ, who's the other one? Not KRB. Why can't I think of it? Yeah, easy. They were just positive. They were just barely there. And so I think more than anything, they were just missing firepower and individually didn't play all that great. You make some good decisions, but you come up against these teams like Hellraisers and Spirit, which, by the way, they don't play against too frequently. And not that that's a good excuse, but these teams have individual skill. Vega is probably the best example. They have incredible individual skill, but even if you want to look into Vega, what the fuck have they done since the last major? So it's, they have a new roster and everything like that. So I think they just got caught off guard by how good and talented some of these other players are, and the ability to not really study them a whole lot and in any kind of like meaningful way, because even with Hellraisers and Spirit, yeah, you might have some demos you can watch of them, but they're generally playing the lower quality opponents, so you're not sure exactly what you can take out of it. So it just strikes me that North is a team that needs to play against teams with a little bit more structure where you can read them a little bit. They're going to be better against European teams, which they unfortunately didn't get to play a whole lot of, because you kind of know the style of play that Europeans are going to bring out. The CIS region seems to be a little bit more of a crapshoot in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, one of the problems as well is, like, as you say, if you think about the North style, especially because North don't have insane firepower, they have like a bunch of solid players, but they don't have many like superstar players that everyone raves about. That's one of the issues, is like they're just going to play their style even against these teams. Like Vega's obviously the most extreme version of it, because they literally are just pushing through some enemy smokes just like at random timings. And the problem with that as well is, like, this is the reason why I made this analogy last time at the last major when Vega got some of those upsets. Is like Vega Squadron are like the metaphor of the birds that fly into the engine and destroy the plane. And the whole point is, a bird will never be better than a plane at flying, but a bird can fucking destroy a plane and take a plane down. So the problem here is, like, the reason why, like, for example, okay, FaZe Clan has the skill where they could absolutely do what Vega Squadron's doing and maybe even like fucking wreck some games completely. But it would be a waste of time to do it, because it only works every now and then. It's not going to work every time, and definitely not against really good teams if they know you're going to do it. So, like, the problem with that is I feel like this is a team that's almost tailor-made to get odd upsets and then not go out further in the tournament. Like, I'll go ahead right now and say there's no way this team is making it to the top 8 of the tournament, like, it's just very unlikely. But one thing I will definitely say about Vega Squad that I've got to give them props for is I definitely thought, as soon as Mayor left, like, come on, that's it. That's, like, you can't just lose players from the lineup, Were you going to say something?
No, I was just agreeing with you as you were talking.
No, it's just because it lagged a second, so I couldn't tell if you were trying to come in there, right? No, because the problem is, like, that's two factors. Is one, Mayor was the guy who always had the insane stats where they got most of those upsets. So you thought, right, well, he's supposed to be the best player. And then the other factor is, maybe this doesn't matter. Maybe they really just actually have this philosophy and tell all the new players as well. But I also thought to myself, right, maybe that's why Vega Squadron can make this ridiculous style work. It's because they've just had the same 5 players for like 5 years, and that's just what they do. But apparently they've found a way to translate it to the new people. So it's not proper Counter-Strike, but props gets wins occasionally.
Yeah, well, it's not like they're fucking transferring.
By the way, Chopper was fucking nuts at that. Like, it was actually unbelievable, the performance he put on. And for a team like Vega that plays a little bit crazier and a bit hyper aggressive for your entry fragger to be putting up the stats that he was, of course they're going to cause some fucking upsets. Like, this guy was absolutely mental, especially in the last, the BO3 against North and versus and Liquid. The only teams he struggled against are Big and Spirit, and they beat both of them very narrowly. But I mean, to have that kind of a benefit, I don't know if he'll be able to bust that out in the next stage, especially against the better teams. But that's obviously going to help you get some upsets through any kind of Counter-Strike.
Especially because, that's the crazy thing as well. It'd be one thing if they just found some new talent in CIS that we've never heard of, and he's the guy. Chopper was there the whole time while Mir and Kashanda were there. He just wasn't one of the guys you looked at, That's why I gave the analogy on Twitter. It reminded me of that Epsilon team where, like, the whole point of that team was everyone in their brain was like, well, there's no way they're all good, so let's find who the good player is, and then he should join Fnatic, and then the other guy should join Nip. But it's like every time that happened, the other player left was like, right, well, now it's my time to shine. I get to be the star. And it actually did happen. That's why literally like 3 or 4 of them ended up on top teams. I mean, some of them sadly dropped down again, but they all got their chance eventually because in their team, they were able to be like the focal point. Right, so moving on, I thought another team that would be interesting to talk about here would be Complexity. Because Complexity, on the one hand, has that weird, like, downplay element where they did only play one map in every single game, and so people are going to say, like, well, you can't really know who the team is if you only played one map in every game. But they weren't a team a lot of people had necessarily making it through to this part of the tournament. I'm sure a lot of people thought they would just go out, They only really have shown us something at the Americas Minor, which obviously people don't put too much stock in, even though they did beat NRG in a best of 3, which is something. Alan, what do you think of Complexity?
I'm not really sure is the answer, to be honest. I thought they'd go out 0-3 here. I didn't think they really had a chance, or at least 1-3. But I mean, they took some decent scalps actually, which was quite surprising.
They're one of those teams that I think that people sleep on, and it's probably fair to sleep on them a little bit because they just don't know. For instance, like the Ye and Android have been names that have been floated around as these huge potential players in NA for quite some time. Obviously, Ye's had a great event. I think Android had a couple great individual games in there. But I mean, they there were some whispers about them just because I think sneakily, I mean, Stanislaw and Shazam coming in is sneakily like a really good pickup for this team, but it didn't get like a lot of hype around it. Like everyone knows the names, obviously, but even those two players have had very minimal success in their career, so it wasn't like these massive splashes. It wasn't like anyone going, "Oh shit, Complexity just made this huge upgrade." And a lot of their success is sometime back. So I mean, I know they did like a 10-day boot camp in Berlin where they told me they were playing like 5 or 6 maps per day. So they put a lot of Counter-Strike in. They have Rambo as a coach. I think there was a lot of positive signs about this team. But again, it's fine to sleep on them because you hear all that all the time, and it's not one of those lineups that, like I said, it's not like some big splash of like these pedigree players where you could say, okay, like these guys can do something based off this information we're getting. It's just kind of like, okay, maybe we'll just see them be left as sad as that sounds. But I thought they did great. I thought they were. There was the other North American team, Rogue. I thought was super cool to watch. So I just think I think those sneaky pickups and obviously the improvement of Ye and Android over the years has made this into not a team that's going to get top 8 in the next section, but they can do an upset here and there,
Yeah, I think the thing that I actually was impressed by, like, is an actual positive, is it's not like, okay, one of the reasons why back in the day when I watched, like, the ultimate example for me is, like, Space Soldiers. The reason why I have never been on any kind of a Space Soldiers train, I mean, funnily enough, train would be a pretty good idea for traveling to events, because you can't get any fucking visas, so maybe, a lot of soft borders there, just saying, just something to think about. But anyway, the reason why I've never been on such a Space Soldiers hype train is because they always had such a ludicrously small map pool, and then every time they got an upset, it would be like the same 2 names that we all know, who infamously stats will tell you are the top 10 players in the world, just fragging everyone's head off. So it's like, these are not actually like Counter-Strike win conditions. Like for example, if Hellraisers wins a game because Woxic drops 35, that actually isn't Hellraisers beating you. That's a player called Woxic beating you. Like, unless they somehow, it's their whole system building up, which it clearly isn't in that example. It's not actually that team's better. So that's the problem I always had with teams like that. Whereas actually, Complexity, sure, you have to take into account we didn't see more maps from them, so I can't really know how well-rounded they are. But actually, as a team, they didn't have like insane fragging. Different players were top of the scoreboard in all the games. It actually looked like a pretty decent team effort. And I have to say, I'm really interested to see what the impact of Rambo as a coach is going to be, because one thing people didn't notice was when he coached that MVP project team, they got a lot better, because that team before, people forget this, when they first came back with people like Solo and Glow, people from 1.6, Solo was fucking terrible. Like, these players were not good. It was one of those ones where people are like, oh, I can't wait to watch one of my old favourites, like when fucking Kogu plays now, and then they're like, yeah, I'm out on that. Yeah, I'm not going to be watching any more games. Like, they don't follow because it's just depressing, isn't it? Well, the thing is, one of the things that MVP improved in a lot was their fundamentals of the game got way higher. Like, their actual understanding of the meta and how you play a bomb site and how you read it. That's the stuff that improved, Later on, I'm sure some of them individually got their shit together and now they looked half decent. But that's one of the things I wonder about, because we know, like, the coaching aspect in NA has been very limited. A lot of the players, like you say, Moses, they're people where they've been around the invite level and maybe they have talent, but for whatever reason, they haven't gotten the chance. And until you get that chance to get in the top team, you usually don't get a chance to learn any of the basics of the game. You're still just out there trying to frag everyone's head off. So I think there's some positive signs there. And obviously, Stanislaw is someone who has accomplished some things in his career. It's just, unfortunately, he tanked his stock with the whole Liquid thing. The fact that, he gave up being the in-game leader, and then obviously he was like the worst player when he wasn't in-game leader. So that combined with the Optic kerfuffle has kind of killed his stock for a while. As usual, people just ride like recency bias so hard, they were against the idea he could ever do anything again in his career. Do you have any thoughts on Complexity, Max?
Yeah, I definitely think that the core of Def, Android, and Yay, because I went through a period late last year where I watched a lot of complexity demos. And
Why'd you do that
Bless
last
your
Why'd you
heart.
do
Jesus
that?
Christ.
well, no.
What sort of darkness was inside you at that time?
No, though, yeah, for a specific reason. And I definitely thought while watching it that Android specifically was an insanely talented player, and that like their not necessarily like their individual ability, but their individual awareness as players, I thought, like in between players as well, was something that I thought was far bigger than the results they were having. And whether you can like attribute that to the like maybe like lack of investment from a leader or instability as a leader is whatever. But I definitely think when I saw Snazore and Shazam joining that I was really optimistic, because I definitely think that like core, they've been together for a while. I think it was like late last year that it was Ye that joined, and these three players have been together for a while, and I agree with Moses that I think they've definitely been sort of hyped up around the lower levels of NA. And I was super optimistic when I saw Stanislaw joining them, and so I'm glad that that's actually manifested in results.
I think the cool thing as well, Shazam is playing the best Counter-Strike of his career since I've been watching him for 4, even competing against him way back when. And on top of that, I think guys like Ye and Aaron are super. I know Ye especially is like super hungry. I know I've talked to him a couple times about some things regarding like becoming more consistent in his performances, and I don't know. I don't think he'll care. I know he's had some conversations with Duncan. You'll love this. He sat down and talked to Cypher from Quake about like his practice habits and his way to like train his aim, because he believes Cypher has one of the best like natural aiming in all of esports. So he spoke to him and been like, how do I make this more consistent? How do I come into every game feeling like I'm going to have my aim on point? Which is really cool. And there's not a lot of players that do that reach out to other esports guys. So he's willing to go that kind of like extra mile in that way, which is pretty sweet. I think the conversation about Def is crazy, because he's been in NA.
What you were saying there about the only thing about that is like, God bless Cypher, what a fucking legend this guy must be as a human being, because if you know anything about Quake players, they despise Counter-Strike. They think it's like the shittest game ever, and it's like, it's just for noobs who just hide around corners with an MP5. It's like, mate, that gun wasn't even in our game for like 10 years. What are you talking about? I can't believe he's messaging him like, hey, I am Ye, I play for the Complexity CSGO team, and Cypher's like, right, well, I'll just give you 10 minutes, I guess. So let's see where this goes.
Yeah, so I think that's cool. But Def is super interesting as well, because I thought Def's been in this complexity roster living in America for like 2 years now, I want to say, like 2-ish, give or take. And
times it looked like he was in the fucking witness protection program.
Yeah, I like not achieving anything. And they've kept him on this roster. They obviously saw something, and he played great this major as well. So all these pieces, whatever they did at the boot camp, they all seem to be kind of aligning at the right moment. It's always about peaking, right? And who knows how high they're feeling is. I don't think it's anything crazy, but this is obviously a great accomplishment for a roster of young players for the most part.
Indeed. That's just made me realise that in 1.6, we didn't have analysis desks back then, so obviously there was no banter, there was no fucking sick shit. But what I would have actually done in 1.6, I've just realised one of the most straight fire puns you could make. Because when you did like the Russian walk-in, when you tap control at an interval while you ran, so you did like the crouch hopping, it's like technically what you do in there is when you do a peek, you would always do that Russian walk-in, so the guy couldn't hit your head basically, because it would throw the hitboxes like higher than the model. And so basically what you could say there is like, when you're peeking, duck. That's straight fire. And if it had been about like WNV or Tyloo, that'd be straight fire.
It's not bad.
It's the way I'm actually just like fantasy bants that would have happened 10 years ago if I'd have been there, that I thought of now. Whatever, bit self-indulgent. But
I thought you were going to go the angle of the fact that we've had all this controversy at the FACEIT Major for Valve's update not doing footsteps, and that's the entirety of the end stage of 1.6 was Russian walking or Russian running, so you couldn't get footsteps heard. That's how everyone played.
It did, and it took half the footsteps out. Basically, you could hear a little bit, but the whole point is your brain wouldn't tell you the guy was as close as he was. And the worst thing is, like, people, this is one of those classic things where people would like, anyone could do it. It's like, mate, people like Forrest were way better than everyone else at doing it. So the other thing is, not only would you not know a guy's come around the corner, but it'd be like Forrest and fucking Gugs and stuff, and then they just smash your head off completely. So. But you know what? Valve never updated that because I don't know if you're aware of this. I once had an interview with Yahoo about this where Valve actually didn't care about Counter-Strike or esports for like a solid 15 years, and then they pretended to care later. So, you know, just saying. Just because you come back later, Dad, and I'm like 21, you're like, let's go for a beer. It's like, it's going to take more than that before the trust's back. You know? Listen, you weren't there for my childhood. My mother needed you. You weren't there, and so you're not just going to waltz back in. I can't even play with Meccano. I'm a man. That doesn't make sense. Got a little bit too personal there, right? Anyway, so another team I wanted to talk about, because there were another team with big expectations, is the team Big, Berlin International Gamers. And obviously this is a team where I'm sure a lot of people thought after ESL Cologne, easy, they should just breeze through this point of the tournament, especially because, you know, they looked like a tactical team, they had a decent map pool, you know, there's all these factors going for them. And it was a bit of a struggle, I have to say, at this tournament, actually. They had some hard times. Moses, what did you think about this?
Well, I'll start this out by saying it's nothing personal, and I don't have no ill will towards
Strap in.
But I did want them to eat a little bit of the humble pie after Cologne. I thought they got a bit ahead of themselves, which I guess is fair. There's a lot of excitement into a placing like that and everything, but it was cool to see them humbled, and it was cool to see them have to struggle through things. I think most of their issues, I don't think it's any kind of like crazy like sound the alarms thing. I think it was mostly just individual. Like they didn't have really Next and Tapson weren't showing up for the first few days on an individual level. Smooya had to like carry them through stretches of matches. Smooya against Complexity had like at one point was like 17 and like 6, and his next closest teammate in terms of frags was like 4. And it was just like a little bit unbelievable that was occurring. So I think a lot of the mystery behind the tactics of Big is I think people are going to definitely start looking into that a little bit more. So they're not going to be able to catch people off strategically. But certainly like they need everyone to be showing up outside of Smooya on that team, especially because there's not necessarily great firepower. We know Nex has had some issues in his past with his level of play. So as long as he's there, as long as Tab's there, it should be fine. But it was great to see them the last 2 days kind of step it back. And I'll be honest, if anything, that might actually help them. You know, like if they breeze through that group stage or you know win, if those close games go in their favor and they win, maybe they don't get that wake up call. But the fact that they were pushed to the brink of elimination for is phenomenal. I think that was actually pretty important if they want to do good in the next stage.
No, the funny thing is, tying into what I said before about people arguing about the major terminology, listen, Nex is fully on board that this is a major. He's absolutely aware. It's in his mind the whole time, and he has scientific proof that this is a major. So, because listen, he used to tear up those major qualifiers. If he actually knew that's what this was, he'd probably fucking be MVP, but he knows it's a major, and so he knows. Like, what I love about Nex is that his actual surname is written so that if you're English, you read it as maggot. It's like, well, there you go. Enough said. Right.
That's getting timestamped.
It definitely isn't. I don't timestamp this show, you fool. That's the other one. So
no, someone's going to timestamp that. And
I don't really give a fuck.
Fucking Mr. Magat.
He's a very chill guy. It doesn't matter. Plus, he'll only see me.
It's the worst thing.
Plus, he'll only see me at big events anyway, so he'd miss anyway, right? Okay, Lynxx, what do you think of Big?
So I think the two really interesting players on this team are, well, not Tabson's the best player, but the two that are interesting to me are Smooya and Nex. For Smooya, I really thought it would take him a lot longer to actually kind of refine the fundamentals and that. Because when he played for Epsilon, I mean, if you ever watched that team play, that was not a team with good fundamentals or good cooling and like totally opposed to what Big plays like, basically. So I thought
I believe he just did whatever he wanted in that team.
Basically. Pretty much. And so I'm pleasantly surprised, obviously being from the UK, that Smooya has transitioned better than I expected. But I think his teething problems are some of the reasons that they haven't been able to maintain consistency. Possibly communication might be an issue. That's intangible. You can't really see that. But for Nex, at Cologne, that was do you remember when Device at the end of like 2015, he became much more proactive and he And that kind of like forcing himself on opponents much more made him, it like helped him get over the choking problems, because he had that famous quote where he said that Devilwalk told him that like should play to win, not to play, not to lose. And that's kind of what I think of Next. And that's why I think he looked better at Cologne, but then straight after Cologne, he starts having issues again. He's looked better than he did before then, but it's just he just can't maintain enough consistency for me. So it's still kind of a tabs and sort of smear show at the moment, and I don't think that's enough for them to have good consistency against good teams. It's kind of what I think of.
Let's not sleep on God B, by the way. God B.
Yeah, he's definitely,
for whatever reason, individually. Yeah, go on.
I think style the big plays or the big. I don't think they have to work so hard to maintain it. I think they have to like. They can't be a team that plays event after event after event, because they need to keep on changing small things. And I just don't think they're ever going to be a really consistent team unless they really up their firepower, to be honest. So yeah.
What were you going to say?
That's always. No, I mean, I was just going to let him the God B thing, but I mean, I think there's some truth in that. But I mean, you could say that about pretty much every team. Is like, you know, even the strategic team. They have more ways to win, but you do need a good amount of firepower, and I think that's the biggest thing that has allowed. I think Gabi's kind of individual step up in his game is what's allowed them to have that kind of success. Because if he's not, you know, we've seen so many games where he's getting like 25 kills all of a sudden, and like a year ago he was like, you know, an MSL figure where everyone criticized him for not getting enough kills, like just repeatedly. So I mean, that kind of a pickup in his level kind of really helps overshadow the fact that they don't have this like depth of consistent star players, but they have, you know, Gabi and they have Nex. Even I think Tizian, by the way, really smart decision maker. He's not going to blow up the scoreboard, but he's great with impact because he makes good decisions and rotates very well. So they have some really cool pieces. But obviously, if you're not going to have Nex that's delivering every single game, or even 75% of the games, then the fact that God B is able to step up in those games where he's not is going to help overshadow that a little bit. So especially because God B plays some pretty important parts on maps. Like on Nuke, I know he plays in Mini, so he has to watch. He's between upper and outside, and he kind of protects both, and he's the rotator down lower. So putting him putting him in those good positions to rotate and read the game and have the individual impact is a big benefit for them.
Right. What I thought we would do is we'll leave some of the teams, like the obvious ones, Astralis team, they're going to be further in the major. They did fine here anyway. It's not really much point going into too much detail on it. So I thought what we'd do is we'll take some of the teams that made it and we'll do some of the big ones that didn't. So on one of the ones that didn't make it, what did you think, Max melit, of Optic Gaming? The green one.
Here we go.
Just throwing me the one of the least amount of VODs I've watched.
I don't want to make a statement about this team. I've been, I have my reputation. We all know.
Too deep.
You guys have fun.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where you want to start with Optic, but I think they're one of those teams where it's like you're seeing. I have this representation of Yuki in my head, and then I have the reality of what he does in the game. And sometimes those two things don't line up. And then I have a representation of how Gage should play in the game, and then what he does actually in the game. And then I think this Optic team as a whole is sort of that duality of how I think their sort of impact fraggers, quote unquote, should operate, and how they actually function in the game are two very different things. I think, but in saying that, also the Cage and B, in terms of how I conceptualize him as a player, actually goes above my representation of him. But yeah, I don't have too many in-depth thoughts about Optic because I haven't seen enough of their VODs. I'm curious as to what other people's thoughts are on Snappy's calling, because that's the one thing I haven't really paid a lot of attention to on Optic. I've been looking at their individuals a lot, but not necessarily how those individuals function within the overall Snappy system. So maybe Moses, that's an abstracted enough sort of topic for you to touch on the system of Optic rather than criticizing any individual players.
No, I mean, I'm not even really. I was kidding about that. I mean, it's tough to kind of talk about Snappy's system because every time I watch Optic play, the only thing that really goes through my head is I'm just kind of curious if the team wants to actually work hard enough to win and become good. Like it's just true. They have too good of players on this roster to be performing like this. And, we've seen now, all the interviews I've seen from Optic over the course of the last month or maybe even longer, maybe like 6 weeks or 2 months or something like that, has been we're in a slump and, things like that. But it's, if you're in a slump for that long, it just feels more like it's some kind of like, or maybe you're just not doing anything to get out of that slump, or you're not doing the right things to get out of that slump. So for that, it brings into question: are there individual players that aren't motivated? And this is all speculation. I haven't spoken to them about this. And is it individual players, or is it like not practicing the right way? Are they just hopping into servers and playing scrims and not actually doing any theory crafting? So I don't know. I don't know what the issues are in that team, but something is obviously not going well. And whether it's the attitude or whether it's the practice itself, they need to fix something. And I mean, to be heading into the major and keep giving these interviews of you being in a slump, like this isn't some unfortunate circumstance. There was a month off for you guys to fix your shit. If you're playing this poorly and then you have the player break, sorry, you don't get a break. You're about to have the biggest tournament, one of the biggest tournaments of the year. It's time to shape up.
I know I would be in a massive slump if I was config in Cage and B and I watched North win DreamHack Stockholm and then had to play an event immediately
that's
afterwards.
The best part, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you notice, I always do that. I always contrast Optic with North because it's like Snappy's on a personal mission to make all the MSL haters have to shut up just by because they're all like, if it was any other in-game leader, they'd be doing so much more with these. But oh shit, my mistake. It's like, Alan, what do you think about the Optic team?
So actually, Snappy was it was just before Zotac, and Snappy was talking in a Discord I'm in, and he was talking about how he didn't like, it was aimed at you and Richard, I think, on By the Numbers. He was saying that
I love this.
He was really this is good. He was saying that basically that it wasn't, not that it was unfair, but he thought it was distasteful that you were like all bagging on Optic before they had a chance to show themselves at big lands and stuff. And then he was saying about how kind of realistic aspirations for the team are like top 10 in the world and that sort of thing. And then
Starkin, rebuttal?
Jump in if you want.
Well, first of all, I'd probably say, like, it's not really a good excuse to be like, but you haven't seen me at any big lands, square brackets, because I can't qualify for any of them and no one invites my team because you've never done anything. And also, how can you judge me at big lands when I don't play at big lands, square brackets. I go to small tournaments, don't ever win them. Lose to all the other teams. Ever heard of the Imperial? They put my shit in a dumpster if they play me. Anyway, and then finally, there's the part where it's like, that angle of like, realistic aspirations, maybe top 10. Can we have a discussion about the term realistic?
Is the impression I got. Yeah, which is like classic, isn't it?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. If it becomes like Ready Player One and that is the world, just online scrims, then listen, I'm on board. They can help save the world, defeat the fucking Sentinels. But sadly, in the real world, Neo, your fucking muscles have all atrophied and we're eating your gruel. So I don't care that in the Matrix you're having steak. No gruel in real life, Optic. There we go. There's the analogy. Right, keep going on.
So I think
in the end.
From watching Optic play, I think their pick bans are pretty bad. They're not good at nuke.
By the way, do you want to know something, Alan? Here's a detail for you as well. Another flaw Snappy has shown in his career as an in-game leader, probably because of practice and stuff, I'm sure in practice it all works, is he's also one of those in-game leaders who thinks he has like the whole map pool. And that has always been the case. Every lineup of Heroic, again, it's the same thing. I would compliment him in Heroic. You know what? I'm actually impressed that you guys have picked up maps people aren't playing like Nuke. You've got Nuke, you've got Cobblestone. You're doing a good job. And then he would go, no, I have Mirage and Trainers. Oh, right. All right, mate. See, I'm just off. I'm just fucking off. Because when I try to give you guys a compliment, it's like, you think that's the diss. So, yeah, I'm with you on this one. Keep going.
So I think they make a lot of like fundamental errors on that, especially the T side. I think they just look, they must be practicing quite a lot. I mean, they can't just be totally bullshitting about, they could be, but I doubt it. But I don't really know what it is. It might be Snappy, it might be the coach, it might be a really bad team culture, but they just don't play good CS from what I've seen. Their trading is really bad. And I can't even criticize Snappy's calling because they never get that. Like the immediate errors are so obvious that I never really get to think about the calling because they don't trade properly, they don't, entry pathing's bad, that sort of thing. And it just isn't something I'd expect from some of these, especially like Cajun. Snappy's called for quite a while. These players should be seeing these mistakes, and the amount of time they've been together, I think it's fair to criticize them quite heavily for how poor they look.
This is also why whenever, like, I've done it myself, obviously, with MSL, I always used to think, like, fuck, if he's getting this much out of players no one thinks is good and no one knows anything about, like, imagine if he actually had the top players. But the problem is that it doesn't work that way. Like, for example, think about it logically. If that's actually one of that guy's skill sets, that he takes someone who maybe doesn't know their role or how they want to play, and then he puts them into a system and he brings them out of his shot, well, you're not going to do any of that when you get Device and Dupree. You know, they already know what they're going to do. Then it's more about the other things. It's about how do you manage their egos? How do you get this player to sacrifice when actually he might be better at the role that he wants to do in his mind than the other person? How do you make people play a map they don't think these are all like aspects that have almost nothing to do with the game. So sadly, that is always the flaw of when you want to see like the up and coming in-game leader go to the higher level. I mean, you see it all the time. I'll give you this analogy, Alan. In European football, there are tons of people who are famously small club managers. If you put them on a small club, they'll make all the sick transfers. Again, they'll get the most out of their team. They'll find a system that works. And what happens is, because you do a wicked job with like the team who's like the 17th in the Premier League, you're going to get a chance eventually. Someone from like, you know, the 7th best team will be like, right, let's bring him in. Maybe he's the man for the job. And what happens is the job doesn't fit their skill set anymore. And even worse, they get overwhelmed by it because suddenly, you know, before no one expected anything and whatever you do is praised. Now it's just scrutiny because you can't win and be the top team, you know. So that's why the reason I bring this up is I'm not writing Snappy off. Like, it's not like he's done and he's just a shit in-game leader and all the past was a lie. It could all be totally true. It could absolutely be the case he was maybe doing a wicked job in Heroic and now it just doesn't work. But as I've said for the last few months, this Optic team is absolutely done. It is busted. This lineup doesn't work, which doesn't, by the way, mean any of the players are bad. The way Counter-Strike works, sadly, the chemistry aspect obviously is like the hidden hand behind the team. You can't physically see that in the server. A whole bunch of these players are clearly decent players, but like the reason that excuse didn't work that he said there about, like, you know, it's a bit harsh to bag on us before we've been to the lands. This team has been together like 6 months now or something. They've actually gone to, I think, like, off the top of my head, I would imagine they've been to like maybe 7 lands. You know, they've been to a lot. So if they still haven't gotten anything, like, unless they know something about Counter-Strike I don't, like, you're not going to turn the corner after like 8 lands or something, you know. It's just not, it ain't going to happen for you. So does anyone else have anything else to say on Optic before we move on and never ever mention them again? A little bit of hyperbole there, but
enjoy Snappy.
I like. I think Gade's gotten a lot of flack recently, but I still want to wait to put a verdict on him. I guess I don't know if any of you feel the same way. I think Gade plays fine. I think the mistakes we see him make and maybe some of the shots we see him miss, I think that's something that we'll get better with over time. But I think he's a pretty smart player that has good decision making. I just don't think he's had enough time at this level to like kind of properly adapt as much as I guess people expect from him at the moment. So I would just say to most people, like, you know, exercise some caution, give the guy a little bit more time, and we'll see where he is, you know, maybe sometime early next year or something like that.
He's also like put in a bunch of like the shittest positions around the map, and he's just that really guy that just gets he's the classic bitch who's like, you're the least experienced player, so come join this team and take all the shit roles and have some fun.
And sadly, by the way, like I should do a video on that topic because it's extremely rare that player ever succeeds. Probably the closest anyone's ever come was when Body joined that G2 lineup where, because it was like the others were already like in a bad spot in their careers, they were like, I'm taking my spots and you're just taking the one that's available. And he obviously did pretty well and, you know, as a result earned his way onto the super team when they made the shuffle. But if you look through history, that is a classic reason as to why young stars fail. Because you get like a May going to Gambit, you get AZ when he went to the old Dignitas when it was actually like the TSM squad. And what happens is this is a young player where if you really believe in his talent, you should be putting him in place of one of your stars and giving him a chance to go. But instead, you go, what's that? You're a really up-and-coming star. Play the shit roles and be the bomb site anchor. And it didn't work for you. Well, get out the team then. And so as a result, they have that yo-yo thing where they have to go back down to the second team. Yeah. Then they get back in their good roles. They start to shine again. And one day, eventually, they get the real chance to come and replace someone and do it. So I think, I have the same read on Gade. It's like, I can't judge him too harshly because I actually feel like this team's a waste of time for him. Like, I don't feel like he's going to accomplish much. I would, if I'm him, he should be in like Heroic. That's a team in which maybe he could actually show us something, you know, and then maybe one day earn his way up.
It's a weird spot to be in if you're Gade, just because
you have to take the offer, don't you? That's
you do. That is the big issue, because it has the names, it has the attention, it has the brand to it, and it's going to get you opportunities that you won't have immediately with other teams. But it does seem to be like a situation where he's kind of stuck at like a really stressful struggle.
It's the fucking poison chalice, isn't it? It's like you can't turn down the big team with all the money in the international lands, but at the same time, like, just look at most of the other people who fucking drank from that. It's like the end of, like, the Lost Crusade in Indiana Jones. There's also skeletons around that cup.
They're all just melting.
And then, I probably wouldn't drink from that cup personally. I'd let a Nazi do it first.
And Freiburg's there, just holding the wooden cup. Like,
exactly, yeah.
So it would be Freiburg of all people as well.
Will you take the humble path like our Lord did, Carpenter? Sick movie, by the way. Love it. To be fair, I feel like that every time I try to hype up fucking MSL. It's like, I should have sent this hype to the Marx Brothers.
I want to jump in, actually.
Come on.
That point you made about putting new players in tough spots, I don't entirely agree, actually. I think if you put them in a team with really good leadership and coaching structure, I think it's a really good move to put new players into, like, anchoring an entry spot. So if you look at Twist is the best example in the world of this. He is a really good anchor and entry.
From Liquid or the Swedish one?
Yeah. Not the Swedish one, the Liquid one. And it's quite obvious to me that Zeus has molded him. It's about a little bit of Sean as well, of course, in Misfits. But I think having the blank slate when you've got the right people above them does make sense to put them into, what am I trying to say? In the correct scenario, I think it does make sense to put new players into the hard spots. And I think Rops is another example on CT, maybe not T side. But you need a good coach, which maybe
it's not even necessarily a good coach. You need like a healthy team environment, right? Where everyone's kind of working together and everyone has like and obviously I don't know what's going on in each of these teams. I would just assume at the moment that Liquid has a better environment. I think I think there's some truth in that as well, because obviously those kinds of positions will teach you way more quickly than putting them in like the soft and easy spots and letting them do whatever they want. But at the same time, I don't know if I could compare the situations of Gade with Twist and Rops, considering how fucking talented and skilled those guys were right from the get-go. Like even if they made wrong decisions, they had skill that could pull them out of those situations. I don't think Gade necessarily has that kind of skill. I think he's going to have to be a different kind of player. So while it may, there's obviously some advantages.
Play? Would you have Gade as a rotator on CT? Because I don't think I would in this team.
Yeah, I would. But I actually wouldn't mind having him. That's what I prefer. I mean, I know like when I watch him play Mirage, he strikes me as like I think he's the anchor of that A bomb site. He's always the last one sticking around. That's a super hard bomb site as well, because you have so many different choke points and it's such a fluid CT side. I think he plays inner on Train. Could be wrong on that. I think, but I'm. For someone like him, I would much rather put him in a position where he can rotate and he can read the game and he's relying on information from his teammates that are anchoring the bomb site. I don't know if I'd have him as that first point of contact, but I mean, obviously it's going to have some maps. I think this is one of the problems that we have in Counter-Strike at the moment, is that everyone is even players have gotten to the point where we're so dedicated and being like, you come into a team and you're like, I'm the B bomb site anchor. And it's like, no, like you might, if things aren't working, we're going to have to shift this around. We can try this for like a week, and if it's not working, let's try someone else new, and let's see if this defense goes better. And I think we need to get out of that. And maybe he's an anchor on Mirage. Maybe he becomes a rotator on Train. Maybe he's an anchor on Nuke, and then maybe he's a rotator on Dust, whatever it might be. But you can't just call someone an anchor player on every single map and stick them into a bomb site and let them chill unless they're like fucking Forrest or Nico, and they just say, this is what I'm doing on this team. And you're really good, so that's fine.
Right, what about this then? This actually, I'll tell you in advance, so I'll give you the heads up. This is a trap. So I'm going to ask now about Ninjas in Pajamas.
Here we go.
But I'm going to specifically ask you about Ninjas in Pajamas along this context, okay? So they are a team that just finished top 4 at one of the big events of the calendar, DreamHack Masters Stockholm. They are a team that 3-0'd the group here. They beat the number 1 team in the world, Astralis, who very rarely loses. You know what? A lot of people feel like they're up on Ninjas in Pajamas. They're a team that's going to go places. They've got it together. So I don't just want to know about Ninjas in Pajamas. I want people to actually put themselves on the line and tell me, Is Ninjas in Pajamas going to be good, and are they going to do well at the majors? So, Max, now's your time, buddy. What do you think about Ninjas in Pajamas?
So it's just like, they are good, and then just like fucking Duncan appears behind me, some shit. Yeah. No, I don't
Nothing
think
personal,
they.
kid.
Yeah, just like. I think they. Oh yeah, I don't know. They're like one of those teams, especially with Lekro calling, where I would prefer to have Lekro calling than Dennis, because in my head Dennis is like this like Prince of Chaos type character, where he just fucking like walks onto a team and then just like uncertainty and like brimstone and fire just reigns. At least Lekro seems at least to a degree measured in the way that he wants to play the game, and I think it's all fine to praise Lekro as an IGL when things are well, but when things are going well for them, but when he has to like start managing the pedigree of the NIP players and starts having to like try to pull people in line and maybe try to structure the system even more than it currently is, I can very easily see a world where it's like, who the fuck are you to tell me what to do, type thing. But in saying that, I definitely think they have the individual skill to pressure teams like Astralis and to match them on a man-for-man level. And it goes back to this idea of, like scrappier teams being able to, if they can match more structured approaches man-for-man. It's like any team with the caliber of talent that NIP has can beat a top 3 team in the world. But in terms of longevity, I'm taking a tempered approach. Did I fall into the trap, Duncan? Am I gonna be exercised?
Here's the thing: it's actually fine if you go ham on them. Like, it'd be cool if someone did. I think, like, and obviously if it works out, the reason why I set that up as well, it's a trap. But on the other hand, there is a prize in the trap. If they go on and do like top 4 at the major, everyone's gonna call you a genius.
I'm not a genius.
Are they gonna get top 8?
Yeah, they're gonna get legend spot.
No, I'll go say that they won't.
Max, are they gonna get legend spot?
Yes.
Ooh.
He's in on him, right? Alan, come on, why
Yeah.
not? What's wrong?
So I was actually watching some NIP games earlier because I wanted to go back through and see what on earth they're doing. And you wrote a piece on it, Max, a while ago, basically saying how chaotic they are. And I don't think at the time I realized how true that was.
Yeah.
And I watched them this morning. I was just like, what the hell is like their CT sides are total madness. They just passed the AWP around for fun. Like I think that they'll get really exposed if they go into series play. I don't think their map was very good, and I don't think they've got a B plan if their more chaotic Lucidity terrorist style doesn't work. I really don't think they've got great execution to fall back on. So they can make top 8. They've got it's quite. I think people might sleep on just how skilled this team is. It's a really skilled team.
Course,
it's probably top 10 in the world of skill. They can make top 8, but I don't think it's likely.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. That's the thing that kills me about the NIP team. Like, if you went back like a year and a half, what I used to hate about NIP is they didn't have enough raw firepower, and they didn't have tactics, and they didn't have very good team play, and they didn't have good in-game. It's like, I don't know how they ever thought anything was going to happen. I mean, obviously, part of the problem is I always felt like they were actually victims of having those weird successes at the Aucklands of the world, because that would give them the confirmation bias that, like, yeah, we were just unlucky at all those other tournaments. Like, that was just a bad day, oh, that guy just played bad. So because they were winning, which, by the way, almost never happens. If you're like the 10th best team in the world, you don't win a fucking tier 1 tournament and beat SK and FaZe back to back. That is miraculous shit. That's why it's not like a meme. It really is magic. I don't know how they do it. Like, it's inexplicable. But I will say it's also magic because it only happens every now and then. Like, the rest of the time, back to reality, back to the pen and the pad, all that, all the good old Eminem before he got political and shit. So here's the thing. I agree with you. It's actually sad how much talent is in the NIP squad. This is why I keep saying at the moment, like, in-game leaders are worth their fucking weight in gold. Because you look at teams like MIBR, you look at this squad, you look at Mouse Sports, like, on paper, these teams should be banging it. They should be like some of the best teams in the entire world. They've got FaZe-esque lineups for their regions, in terms of talent, but they don't have whatever the coordinating factor, at least so far. They haven't shown us the results. So also, I have to say, the reason why I didn't really put too much stock in the Astralis win here, the best of one on Mirage, is that actually NIP, bizarrely, have ended up being one of the few teams who, in a best-of-one type scenario, had a decent veto against Astralis. Because Astralis tried to veto NIP's best maps, which on paper are Overpass and Train. Because obviously, Astralis can play Overpass, absolutely, but they have just lost it at a tournament. And if you think it's the other team's best map, you're going to avoid it. Train's just one that obviously Astralis don't generally want to play. And then they remove Cash anyway. So they ended up on Mirage, which is the map Astralis had lost 2 of the last 3 on. It was obviously the close one against NIP before. So actually, that was kind of tailored for NIP to have a chance there. The question I have is, if NIP plays against FaZe Clan, if they play against Mouse Sports, what's going to happen then? I mean, my imagination is probably going to lose the game. I think the worst thing is, I think even their strength is counted against these teams. I don't really see how you just frag out against them. So, yeah, I think it's kind of rough. And then also, I don't really know, because like you're saying, it's not like they seem strong fundamentally. When you look at some of the wacky teams out there that can upset you in Swiss system, I don't know what they're going to... that's just a coin flip to me. They could completely fail. They could take care of them. I don't know.
I think I'll take them to get in the top 8. I'm just looking at like the legend stage, like teams. I think the BO1s is the critical part. I don't know if they get... I don't think they'd get top 8 if they had to go play with one of those best of 3s in the A. But if they can go through in the best of 1s, I think they'll be fine. I think they've showed that they can compete with even the best in the world just for one map. I mean, we have Forrest playing lights out and seemingly very, very hungry for this, and we all know what that means. I mean, he's given those interviews where he's just saying he's not ready to be out of this major yet, which is a good sign. Get Right has had a resurgence of form going back to Stockholm as well. He played well in this major qualifier for most of their games. Lekro obviously has been incredible. I think the one kind of X factor, especially if they get Dennis is the one player on this team that I still haven't really seen like switch on. Like for whatever reason, he's not reaching that individual peak that we saw from him in Fnatic. So if Dennis comes to play and Dennis shows up and they have that firepower as well, I think definitely they make top 8. If not, I think it's a little bit more of a crapshoot, but I'll take them getting there just because, that win over Astralis in the BO1 might, be, you can always make that a little bit questionable because it was
still
the BO1
a legit win.
Yeah, and then but like the series that they had in Stockholm against Astralis as well, it's like holy shit. Even though they got kind of blown out on Nuke, I think that was a closer game than the score kind of presented. And I mean, they lost it overtime. I think it was on Mirage again.
Yes.
So I think this is a team that certainly can do a lot of damage in the BO1s. And I see maybe like 3 teams that I would say they have like no chance of beating. Maybe teams that I would say they have no chance of beating. And other than that, I think this is going to be a team that that can beat anyone else in the pool if they get in a one map series.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna double down a bit. I'm gonna say because I think there's like, I think a lot of the matchups now looking at the actual bracket are like sort of 60-40% matchups. Like sort of or like 70-30, and also that there's so many teams in that Legends group. Like I'm looking at like Vega, Tyloo, Hellraisers, Fnatic, Windstrike, Mouse, and like to a degree FaZe and Cloud9 that all play this sort of style where it's even if NIP are at a disadvantage, it's at like that 60-40% disadvantage. And I think that my like sort of big dick cheese grabbing in the middle of the trap guess would be that there's a series of upsets. That means that like between the first round there's a bunch of upsets, and that NIP like sort of fluke their way through the draw to the top 8.
Right, what he's saying now, Alan, is where people like me and you get fucked over totally unfairly. Because here's the thing, people don't care about like the context. If they can say that we're wrong, we're wrong. So what will happen is NIP will play against like bizarrely Cloud9 will win a game. They'll get them and beat them.
Yeah,
then
for
they'll
sure.
play
They'll destroy Vega.
Scenario, and then they'll get one legit win. Like maybe they'll beat like I don't know, pick someone from here, Team Liquid in one game, and then everyone will be like, "You said they'd never get top 8." Like, yeah, I also didn't know God would like reach out of the fucking sky and just start dusting off matchups for him, did I?
I'm going to go for the God reach approach.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right. There's not that much time left, so we'll move on to another team now. But a team I thought we could talk about, because everyone's finally on the hype train that I was on a while ago. But if you notice, I'm very good at picking my hype trains.
If this is who I think it is, Duncan.
Are you ready?
I've never gotten on this fucking hype train.
Good. You're going to be left at the fucking station.
Yeah,
so
bring it, bitch.
Here's the thing, right? I'm very careful with my hype trains. I don't just see like one good game and go, I'm in on this team, and then just quietly never say anything. And
No, you just
my article on
existence.
actual esports for 9 months. Listen, existence is the fucking once and future king of Counter-Strike, and you will find that out one day when another player joins his team. In a year from now,
I love existence.
Listen,
I love
are you ready?
existence,
Are you listen?
Yeah, I'm
in a
listening.
year from now, G2 will have one different player at least,
Okay.
and they will have had some like finals of big tier 1 events, maybe even won one. 1 year from now, you ready? Put that in the time capsule, bury it, have children dig it up, and then tell them this is an example of what never to be. And then, so anyway, back to the point. The team that I'm going to refer to now is Tyloo, China's Tyloo. Because here's the thing, when I actually hyped them, it wasn't actually on the basis that I think, they're going to win a tournament or anything. Like, I think there's way too many flaws and it's just unrealistic. But like that style of play they have, nobody plays this style of play. And it's actually fucking entertaining to watch. And crucially, if you look at the team they've got, where I think people probably saw that tweet I retweeted, I forget who it was from, where it's like, in their team, they are actually speaking 3 different languages. Yeah. Like when Bentek calls, he calls in English for most of them to understand. By the way, they barely understand English. You can't talk to them. Then he calls some Chinese, they call them between the Chinese players, and then he speaks in Indonesian to Excurate. So if you have a team like that, you do not want to play fundamental Counter-Strike. It will absolutely fail, because it's like if me and you both try to play the Astralis style, but I have no mic. Like, it's just not going to work. So they've actually found the one style that actually could work, and that's why the guy who's getting all the hype is somebody, because he is the player who fits that style down to a T. In fact, I think if they tried to play standard Counter-Strike, he'd end up looking like someone who made a lot of mistakes, and got caught out too much. But he looks fucking awesome when he plays this style. So who wants to jump in? What do you think of Tyloo?
Oh, mate, I'm biting at the chop. I've got heaps of content coming about Tyloo because they're one of my favorite teams to watch. Because like they have, I think, the most unique approach to playing CS, maybe in like history at a pro level. And because like if you read and try to talk to a bunch of different people about Tyloo, everyone has a different fucking theory about how this team functions because of how confusing they are to watch in game. And I like Ben Tet's just this like chef who's like cooking 3 different meals at once and is trying to frag in between. And then somebody has, like you're saying, this crazy unique approach to playing. And then Excure, it's this weird sort of round closing glue that holds it all together. And then Mo and Didi, like God knows what the fuck they're doing in this team. Like Mo just runs out of places with Mac 10, and then Didi will find like 1 kill somehow every single round. But they also do have executes as well, and they do have strats, which I think will surprise a lot of people. They aren't this team like Vega. They play a loose style and they might lack fundamentals, but they aren't trying to like relentlessly explode onto a site in the early round every single time they feel lost. Excurate, I think, is a very smart player. And not just in terms of the way he approaches the game, but in the way he conceptualizes the team. And I think Ben Tet's also a very smart player. And I think the two of them together working as the primary and secondary caller of this team is a really, really solid foundation from which these Chinese players can play off of. And so I think even in spite of the massive communication issues they have and the like clear lack of fundamentals in terms of team play, and maybe the interplay between like their strats and their players, I think like the fundamental base of how good Bentet and Excurate are in terms of thinking about the team and how willing they are to be flexible in their own roles means that Tyloo is just this like crazy Frankenstein beast of a side that I think is like can be a stable top 12 to 10 team for a while.
What do you think, Alan?
No, I've watched a decent amount of Tyloo, but I just can't nail, especially on the T side, I really can't nail down what they're actually. It's the sort of team, but I just don't actually understand how do they actually call this T side in some respects. So sometimes they do execute. Sometimes the basis of their T sides that I've seen is mainly just sort of like contacty sort of plays, fairly coordinated contact plays, not just totally random stuff, but. I think they could get really exposed by a team with good fundamentals. I think Astralis could destroy them, for example. I think
Tyloo beat them 16-13, baby. But believe in the hype train.
True.
Believe in the hype train.
Let's replay that game.
Once.
See what happens.
Just once.
Just remember the what was it? The IM Shanghai. Yeah, the IM Shanghai final. They got smashed by NRG in that final.
True.
They looked really bad. I didn't like the calling.
Yeah.
The team play was abysmal at times. That's probably a case where their communication came back to bite them big time, and they just couldn't get on the same page in that game. So I think
that's yeah.
You go.
I thought that was the key part, is that they do look like their communication gets lost in some, and it's understandable, obviously, if they're speaking 3 languages. But they do spend a lot of time, I think, when they get kind of stuck, especially on T sides. I remember watching an Inferno game from this qualifier, where it was just like the first 8 rounds of the half was them just getting picked off by an op. And there was never 2 people, someone ready to trade. There was never utility used to push the op back. It was literally just throw a body at the problem and see what happens. And, you can't go that long into a game without kind of adapting and finding a better way to deal with an op. And, that's kind of a scary aspect of their gameplay. And they're not very fundamentally sound. I think it's incredible the amount of success they're able to have, and they have incredible talent. But if they could ever learn how to play a post plant properly, even with some of those issues, because they obviously don't have any problem finding openings and finding their way into bomb sites for the most part. But if they ever clean up those post plants, whether it's on the retakes or defending their own bomb plant, this is going to be a much, much deadlier team, because there's way too much peeking, there's way too much fighting when you don't need to be, and those are the kind of things that they're lacking. So this is still a team, I think, that has to rely a decent amount on momentum and an economic advantage, but there's still very much an element of danger. And man, if you go back and watch that Inferno game, like Tyloo versus Spirit, that one of the 4 overtimes. I remember casting that. Now, that was some of the most ridiculous plays I've ever seen being made in my entire life, and I don't know how they won it. And it's actually insane to watch the things that they're getting away with, surely because, I guess, of their skill. But I think you're also right, Max. I mean, they're not going to be able to get away with all those against a team like Astralis. At the very least, it'll be a crazy play will be trade fragged. Even if it gets you 1 kill, you're not able to survive, whatever it might be. So I think the biggest thing is, it's just cool to see this progression. I don't think they're going to get top 8, but they are certainly one of watch, simply because they're not fundamental. And I think they'll probably win 1 map during this group stage. I think they'll be able to upset somebody.
Oh, the key thing, well, the joke is they will upset somebody if they only map. So
right, yeah.
That was also my joke, actually. I'll say it now, because technically it's totally fine as a joke. When I was at that CSGO Asia Championship, right, this shows you the power that we've gotten to at this point in time. I just did a tweet. All I did is I just tweeted out, I want one of those Tyloo jerseys, just like some 5-year-old statement, okay? And believe it or not, within an hour, a Tyloo manager came running round like, here you go, I will get you the jersey later. And then our jersey arrived. So my joke was, it's a good job I wasn't like, bloody hell. I wonder if they can get somebody to suck my dick. No, wait, that's not what I meant. That was the joke. So anyway, no, the point I want to make though, Moses, is this. When I say it's a hype train that I'm on, it's a hype train that's stopping at all the stations. It's not going all the way, mate. You have to understand. I'm not saying they're going to go... this is the key thing to understand if you start watching Tyloo. If you watch them now and you enjoy how they play, stay on the train. If you think that they have to get better, get off the train. Because that's the thing. What they're doing now is them. That's it.
Yeah.
When they get the really good upset win and it's cool to watch, yeah, that's them. When they have the really bad loss where they don't do things, that's also going to be them. The problem is because they've got these big flaws, outside of just game issues at the moment, it's very unlikely they're going to do what you say, take the next step, get it all together, go to a higher level. Sadly, there's not really, I don't think, much more ceiling to the team. It's just fun to watch now. So if you're into it at the moment, yeah, that's your thing. That's your kink or whatever.
And also, just quickly, if you're going to watch a Tyloo game, I strongly recommend watching the face cams and when the production cuts to the team view, because sometimes you'll see Xgurk, because he doesn't speak, I don't think, as good Mandarin as Ben Tet, literally turning to Didi and Mo and using sign language to signal when they should and shouldn't peak. Okay. And you just see the most egregious things in terms of that team dynamic, players literally leaning and tapping and being
okay, don't
peek. It's the best shit. Tyler's my favorite.
It's pretty good. It's just doing all the SEAL tactics where you doing the 2 taps on the arm high, and then when actually one of them, somebody gets the right kill, Xgurk just whispers in his ear, "Clever girl." And they're anyway, Moses, don't you have to go in a minute?
Yeah, I've got about 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
If you want to
Should
do
we do
something
one
else.
more team then?
Yeah,
Sure.
So, okay,
I thought your hype train was going to be G2, Duncan. I didn't think it was going to be Tyloo. I'm not going to lie to you there.
Oh, we're mainly just talking about the teams in the fucking challenges stage.
I
So
just wanted to make sure. I just,
we'll
I know your
bit for
feelings.
later. Also, by the way, I don't actually have a hype train for G2. I've already said I think the one roster move away, but the key thing that no one else thought about is you don't put together a roster like this for the reasons they did and then just blow it up and just kill the whole thing. It's not going to be like Optic where when it doesn't work, the whole team goes. It's like they're going to just clearly make a roster move. And so, like, to me, I think people are a bit naive thinking you have to make one lineup and then succeed. No one does that. Everyone makes a roster move like 9 months into the lineup or whatever, and then that's how most teams got to the top. You didn't just get born as a lineup and go to the top. Very few people do. So here's the team I want to talk about as the last one. So we've already talked about basically all the ones we need to that have made it through. But there is this team called Renegades.
Oh.
So I thought this would be a way to close the show. So
For
Max...
sure.
They represent your region. Now listen,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean they represent you. Don't ever let anyone tell you that Def and Smooya represent me. If anything, first of all, the fact they're even half decent, mainly on Smooya, that one, the fact that they're even half decent is an exception to the UK scene. So they don't represent anyone in the UK scene. They are nothing like us. And also, I'm a lot better at my job than they are at theirs, right? So anyway, Max, just because you're from the street doesn't mean you have to represent, you don't have to be the biggest fan. So what do you actually think of Renegades?
Can I do the can I do the Moses thing? And look, they're nice guys, and I respect what they're trying to do in game. But I think they I think one of the and it's interesting that we finished talking about Tyloo, because I think one of the reasons why I liked the major so much is you see how the unique approaches of regional teams can be successful on a stage, sort of even in spite of a lack of fundamentals. You can see Vega deploy this unique approach, Spirit, to a degree, Hellraisers if you want to go to that, and very clearly Tyloo. But like Renegades, I don't even think of them as an Australian team, not necessarily because you have like the Norwegian and the American in it, but just in terms of the way they approach the game is just like so vanilla. And it's they're trying so hard to be something that is like just so structured, and they're trying to be really rational, and they obviously sort of like play together, they live together, they have all this time to think about fundamentals and the way they want to approach. They clearly scrim a lot, and it's really frustrating to see them fail with this approach so consistently and be so mediocre and lackluster with such a devotion to the fundamentals. When you see a team like Tyloo and Vega with these crazy approaches find so much more success and be so much more explosive and so much more exciting. Specifically, I think watching Azza, I tweeted out a stat, like he had the lowest entry attempt percentage in the entire tournament. Which is I haven't been following his sort of trajectory as a player within the system, but that seems to be a dramatic shift to the way that I normally conceptualize him as the entry. I know JKS, I did an interview with him at IM Sydney, and it's all sort of fun and games when you're running off the afterglow of Sydney like that, but he was the coach, who is the coach of Renegades?
Rio, yeah, the former Celtics guy, CLG.
He was saying how he like JK, because he's obviously sort of a quiet boy, little pensive lad, and so he was saying how he needs to be way more active in the team and needs to be like secondary calling more. And JKS was sort of pegged to be a secondary caller, except then you get the vibe watching him in the game that he's like so far removed from the action. And then like I don't know if they have enough firepower to justify this sort of structured approach that they're playing. So they're simultaneously just like this very boring team that wants to play fundamentally but fail to do so. So you get sort of the worst of both worlds. It's really hard to be a Renegades fan. That's why I sort of like use the cognitive dissonance of like they're not even an Australian team in my head. They're just this North American side that has the novelty of Australian flags.
You just 60% support them.
Yeah, 66.6 recurring percent.
Representation, exactly, yeah. No problem.
Sure, yeah.
Alan, come on, wade into the waters of Renegades. It's nice and warm here.
No, it's not. It's freezing.
Mind all the blood.
Fuck out while you can.
Full of jellyfish and great whites.
I think they're really missing Kassad, is what I think's going on this team. I remember when just after Kassad left, Nifty did an interview, didn't he, where he said he didn't realise, I think basically the tone was he didn't realise how much more difficult it would be kind of actually calling and setting up the team without without Kassad. And touching on what Max says about how they play really structured, that's potentially a reason maybe Ryu's approach to the game is he loves his liquid demos. He loves to play super by the book. And against really good teams, that you need more elements to your play. You can't just play standard every round. You're just going to get out-rotated. So this team should be better. I think they should have looked better here. It's another one of those teams where I don't totally understand why they're not performing better than, because they've looked over the past, I don't know, about a year or so, they've looked like a pretty decent team, probably borderline, I don't know, top 15-ish, maybe a bit below. And I just haven't been impressed. I really wasn't impressed with them here. And the only win they got was over Space Soldiers with Hardstyle, which is, I mean, that's just a free win, isn't it? So
the sad thing about it. Oh, sorry, go on. Yeah, go on.
I was just gonna say they're like the definition of like one step forward, two steps back. Because every time they seem to like do something good and give you like a little bit of hope and a little bit of excitement, the next event they go to is just like they bomb out of it. I think the last time we saw something like really positive in terms of a step forward would have been IEM Sydney. And I mean that was what, like the 50-50 frag game from Nifty. That's like the last positive thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's so long ago now, especially in Counter-Strike terms. I think the problem, and Freiberg said this to me at the DreamHack Stockholm After Party, was it's not, you can't in CSGO these days, you can't just carbon copy what some other team is doing really well and just integrate it into your game. You have to find some trick and you have to find something like the next big thing to be able to actually get ahead of these teams. And for Renegades, it just feels like they're trying to carbon copy the way other teams are playing and just kind of run that very same thing. But I guess it just doesn't fit their players. I think there's two big issues I have with Renegades. One is we've been talking about this team with like the potential to when they're going to break through for like 3 years now. And I think I've gotten to the point where the answer is just they're not going to. First it was, if they move to NA, they're gonna have better practice, and then it's like, they've only been in NA for 6 months. You give them a year, they're gonna shoot up, and it just hasn't happened. So I think at some point you just have to kind of like let go of that dream. And then I guess two would be just massive disappointment in the fact that if you look at just even like the regional rivals they've always had at every minor, if you look at the fact of all those matchups they've had with Tyloo over the years of the Asian minors, how is it that Tyloo and China have been able to overcome them in terms of how they play the game and how much success they have versus, Renegades, who's playing in North America with all these other teams that are improving? Like now we have NRG, now we have, Ghost, Rogue, and Complexity have all shown really good things. And Renegades is just this one where it's like, what have you guys been doing with your time? So it's just a little bit disappointing. And I'm kind of off the, I guess, this is kind of like me getting, if we're going to give the train analogies, I'm just off the train.
And to jump, it's like, it's not even that they have one superstar player that you could like poach upwards per se. It seems like so many of these Renegades players like typecast into being an underperforming Renegades player. I don't think, for example, like their stock is so low as a team in terms of the hype around their players that I can't even like conceptualize a roster move out of something completely left field like Jacob joining. I don't see a world in which Azure or Stillo or JKS would like move upwards. I don't see a world in which like Nifty can suddenly take control of like a fledgling NA team. Everyone around them in their region seems to be like better than them in terms of maybe like hype and how the scene perceives them. So
that's the really sad part, is because there was a time in the North American scene where teams were just reaching out to guys like JKS and Snazore. Yeah, and they all said, and like fair play, they said no, whether it's a cultural thing, they want to stay with their fellow Aussies, whatever it might be, didn't feel comfortable moving to somewhere else without them in the States. But I mean, I think that ship has kind of sailed. Now, if they ever do break up or leave and want to go to a different North American team, it's no longer going to be the higher tier NA teams asking. It's going to be like you have to go to a Complexity and work your way up the ladder, and you have to go to a Ghost or whatever that ex Dignitas. You're going to have to go. You're going to have to take a step down, or
come back to the warm embrace of the Australian scene.
Go back to your little fucking jail island.
Hey, shut the fuck up. Mind your P's and Q's, dude. Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. Like, I'm definitely with a lot of these points. Like, the similar, like, for example, the depressing thing, if you've followed Renegades for a long time, is it's never been their choice that they keeps getting set back. So they had Naf join, and then he was going ham, and obviously he's going to leave the team. Like, why wouldn't he? It's the logical move. They don't have any power over that. You can't replace him. There's no player of that level who's going to come and join Renegades. There's no option. So they did what they could. They got Jacob, who's a solid enough player. They still managed to chug along. They had Kassad. Thought he did a really good job generally. Seems like he brought the best out of them. He also, according to an interview I've got forthcoming, according to him, he chose to leave. He wasn't fired. He wasn't kicked out. He parted ways with them. That's another move where you'd hope you could keep hold of that talent and it'd all help, So sadly, when you have these setbacks, it's going to be tough. Like, where are you going to find another coach that no one else wants that you could get in your team? Where are you going to find another player that no one else wants who could be the legit star that your team needs? Because again, that's one of the things their team has. I definitely agree with this. They don't have a player who's like a standout star player. Like, they don't have some Woxic type guy who it's like, right, well, either they can ride him to some wins or, like, look out, he's going to be sick in the future. They have a bunch of players who are in their own way decent, but collectively, they're just a bit vanilla, like you're saying. So the sad thing is, the other thing is, stylistically, they just try to play fundamental Counter-Strike, and the problem with that is they're not that good at it. Like, if you are like the 12th best team in the world at playing fundamental Counter-Strike, enjoy losing to all the other fundamental teams, and
That's
enjoy
so 2017.
It just doesn't work. And by the way, that's the part that killed me when Nifty in his interviews started using that narrative of like, I kind of see myself as like a fallen, I'm going to be like an AWPer and I'm an aggressive. I wanted to just hold him in my hands, his face, and just be like, just one tear, just be like, you sweet, naive child, that doesn't even work for fallen anymore. Don't you understand what you're saying? It's not 2016. What are you talking about? And also, I've said the joke before, I'll repeat it again. I know people like to hype up Nifty because he was good at that game, not CSGO, versus now spots on Inferno. That's the old joke, and it will still apply until he does something different. Here's the sick thing I'll leave you on, though. I have a transfer, Max, that could fix this team, could make this team straight fire, and could actually work economically and in terms of communication language. Here's the move no one's thought of.
All right.
Bring over Benta and Exkirat from Tyloo and replace Jacob and Nifty, and then they can speak in English. You've got Benta, sick fragger, he can in-game lead. He's going to in-game lead, obviously, more aggressive style because he knows these Aussies are all pussies. Then Exkirat's going to AWP. He's going to capably AWP. He's going to actually land shots, not just whiff shots like modern-day Fallen. I guess Nifty is like Fallen in many ways. And so there you go. There's the move. All you have to do is get them out of China and not have... I mean, sadly, they've probably signed their souls away. I can't lie. A move's never actually going to happen. But it should be possible. That's our point. And, crucially, are you ready, Max? You can stay in the fucking the Asia Minor. You can keep playing that dog shit Asia Minor, getting that free Willy Wonka. That's like when Willy Wonka put out... I mean, it didn't really happen. I'm saying it like it's a historical event. That's like when Willy Wonka put out those like 6 golden tickets, and your dad literally just knows he's getting one delivered to his fucking factory. You just go up and get the golden ticket, don't you? There's no challenge. You're not like running around, oh, can I save up for one? Oh, I've got a golden ticket, whatever. So anyway, that's the move. That's the move we're going to end on. That's the dream. That's the what if. Probably never happen.
It'll never happen.
No, no chance.
Exactly. This video was kindly supported by Gardner Wilson, Dean Tanglis, Alex Adams, Eddie Wingfors, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Godawful Waste of Space, Kyla Harris, Travis Greb, James Harding, Daniel Yordanov, VeXii, Robert Baxter, and a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest to appear in my content? Do you want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Do you want teasers for upcoming content and guests? Want to take part in a discussion about esports with me? Put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today. Link in the description box.